16 years.
Oh,
Okay,
okay.
I've been working as an accountant for 16 years now.
Did you ask for a salary raise or role change?
During COVID season, are you crazy?
Okay, yeah. Maybe not now.
You've done this before. I don't see why you can't do it now. Okay, so it actually plays a very big role in motivating them to do something. Say, hey, yeah, actually we did it before.
Hi everyone, welcome to the Lead channel. Today we are talking with Matthew Sia, who is the Regional Finance Manager of Hitachi Vantara. And today we're going to learn why he started picking up coding and how it affects his day-to-day working. So Matthew, what made you go into finance in the first place and then later focus on management?
Well, okay. When it comes to finance, it was actually something that I studied, in university. And why I picked it up is because, well, I was actually under a scholarship, back in college. So they actually offered finance, and I happened to be quite good in accounting back then. Okay, because I took principles of accounting back in school. Okay, so I decided to pursue that, as my career path at that point in time. Okay, so I actually studied finance in college, and I actually graduated with both a bachelor's degree and a master's degree in finance. And I'm also a CPA Australia professional degree holder. So I'm actually a certified professional accountant. Okay, with
Oh,
CPA Australia. Okay, so that all happened within the space of, I would say, about 16 years.
oh,
Okay, I've
okay.
been working as an accountant for 16 years now. Okay, so in terms of management, I would say starting the year 2010, I actually was promoted to be the team leader. Okay, for the global expense management team. Okay, it's actually a team under finance. So they actually made me in charge of a team of three people, and the three people were all over the place. We had we had one particular person in Houston, Texas. We had one more in Costa Rica, and we had another one in India, in Bangalore, India. So that was my first taste of management in terms of managing people. Okay, so I found that I actually
What were
had.
you thinking
Yep.
when you were faced with this kind of group that everyone is so far apart and it's your first time managing a group?
I'm not gonna lie to you. The first thing that I thought was, oh my goodness, my working hours are gonna be so spread all over the place. So I actually ended up dividing my time, for the person in Houston, for the person in Costa Rica. I mean, thankfully, two of them are actually in a very similar time zone. Okay, in the Americas region. But then I also had to spend some time with the person in India. So by doing this, I actually realized I had a flair for it. You see, I had a flair for managing people, and I actually knew how to make people feel comfortable, make people want to do their job. And then I also find myself as being a very good coach and a mentor as well. So I'm able to actually guide them in terms of what they need to do. So that little flair of mine, grew to become a bit bigger, as time passes by. So I actually went on, after that, to manage teams of like 7 people. Then it became 12. And then it got as big as 25 as well, 25 people when I was in AXA Affin. Okay, and then currently in Hitachi Vantara, I'm actually managing a team of 17. Yeah, so I've gotten quite used to managing large teams. So I guess that's it's both a good thing and a bad thing. Good thing is that you have that you have that badge that you carry around, saying that I've managed
Oh
big
yeah.
teams before. Yeah, but I guess it means that you need to know how to split your time, to actually give everyone the attention that they need. You see, so yeah, that's a little bit about me when it comes to management. Yeah.
Yeah, you seem like the kind of person who would like to help people go into the people they can be, isn't
Yeah,
it?
yeah, I am actually. Yeah. So yeah, so it really ties into why I actually got enrolled in whatever in whatever we are going to talk about in the coming questions. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, how does it help you to have these two skill sets of finance and managing, and then with the experience as well?
Okay. So this one, I believe that if you have skills in finance as well as management, it really already gives you most of the ingredients that you need to run, a small company, run a small SME. Like I've always told my boss, whatever I'm doing right now, hey, I could actually just run a very small, like Sendirian Berhad company, a small private limited company. Yeah, so that is why it really helps, because you can actually, these two skill sets, finance and management, they actually are very generic across industries. So you need to have these two, okay, and then plus maybe the industrial experience, depending on what industry you're in, and you're already good to go. You see, so that is why I always felt that these two skill sets are very important. Yeah.
Mm. Just to follow on, you said that with these skills you can actually start your own company. Why haven't you done so yet? Are you like comfortable working in a bigger company, or is there some other reason?
Yeah, I always felt that I still have a lot to learn, and I'm a very conservative person, so I don't have that risk appetite as of now, especially now with COVID going on. I don't think it's a good idea to do something like that. Yeah,
That's fair.
so that's why I still believe that I've got a lot to learn in terms of how to manage a business. You see. So yeah, that's kind of like what I'm doing right now. I'll probably do something in my later years, I think. Probably not now.
Yeah. You do seem like a person who likes to really continuously learn and learn a lot. And I noticed that you have been taking up a lot of computer classes and certifications.
Yep.
So what made you pick up data science? Was it like you wanted to simply learn a new skill? Was it out of fear, curiosity? What led you there?
That's a very good question, actually. So I've been working for this amount of time in finance, and I actually increasingly saw that a lot of the work that we do is becoming very, very data driven. Okay, so you'll notice that in finance back then, there's some sort of an evolution. When back in the day, you actually deal with just data on paper, and the amount of transactions are very limited compared to today, where we have a lot of transactions, and everything, that you deal with, comes in thousands, at least. Okay. Like even Microsoft Excel right now, it can go up to 1 million lines. Okay. So what does that tell you? It tells you that, large amounts of data is becoming more like a new norm, in this industry, in the finance industry, you see. Because as businesses grow, businesses will want to grow, so as they grow bigger and bigger, they actually would, require skills, to process large amount of data or large amount of transactions, which is why I started picking up data science, because I felt that I needed to equip myself with the skills that are needed to be able to process, to analyze, and to interpret large amounts of data. That's why, and I read that, there are a lot of useful tools out there that could enable you to do this. So we have like Python, we have R. Okay, so I started with R. I think Dr. Lau would be able to tell you more. I started with R. So I took about 3 certifications. I did R basics. I did visualization in R, and I even did probability and statistics as well in R. Yeah, so I've got these 3 certificates, and then the Data Science 360 program came along the way. So I thought, hey, this is probably a better solution, rather than taking things one by one. You see, so it introduced me to the new language called Python. Okay, so I actually signed up for it, and I think that was actually one of the best decisions I've ever made, because it really gives you the the adequate amount of knowledge, to actually become a journeyman data scientist, say, so to speak. Yeah. Was it out of fear? Yes, because definitely, it doesn't. You don't need to be a genius to see this. To see, like, as we progress into a business environment that involves huge amounts of data. Okay, if you don't have the skill sets to be able to manage that sort of large volumes of data, or to analyze it, okay, you're going to be left behind. You're not going to have the abilities that make you employable. You see, so that is why I actually decided to undertake this line of study. Actually, yeah.
So do you think it's necessary for everyone in today to actually pick up data science skills in order to
Yeah.
compete in the future markets?
Well, I think it's a very good it's a very good field to study, I would say, because I speak for the finance industry, but I'm sure in the rest of the other industries, like maybe even HR, I think HR is a good example, or even maybe engineering or even science as well, like real hard sciences. I think you need to actually have that data processing skills, and the ability to analyze and to interpret large amounts of data. So, like I said, every industry in the world is increasingly becoming very data driven. Okay, because we actually want to find out, what is the, we want to be able to forecast, what's going to happen. We want to be able to predict, we want to be able to make recommendations, to our customers or to our management, you see. So I believe that these skill sets actually enable you to do so. That's why.
And is this especially important for the finance industry specifically?
Well, not specifically. Finance, yes, very important. I will give you that. Okay, but let's say HR as well. Okay, because I believe it's one of the case studies that I did as well. For Data Science 360, it was actually a HR case study. So you need to be able to predict. Okay, if somebody is going to leave, you're going to need to be able to predict attrition. So by using data science methods, okay, you actually have all your breadcrumbs, digital breadcrumbs that your employees leave behind, and you can actually take those data bits and actually analyze them and be able to make predictions as to whether someone will leave. So you can actually use indicators like their performance evaluation, their salary levels, whether or not they have stock options, whether or not they have been promoted in the last 5 years. So all these kinds of data that is probably available in any HR system, that actually is a very useful resource to make you be able to see, whether or not your employee is going to leave, so to speak.
Wow, I actually never really thought of it that way.
You probably
that's really good.
Yeah, it's really good. I mean, I'm not saying it's going to be spot on 100%, but like what I told people, it's going to be able to give management a sense as to whether someone is a flight risk, so that we can actually take mitigating actions to prevent the person from actually leaving at the end of the day. So that's why.
Yeah. That's really useful.
Very useful. Yes, very, very useful. Yes. So I believe this is, a method of the future, so-called. Okay. That is why that's why again I said this field of study in data science is actually very important, because it enables you to do stuff like that. To put it simply.
Yeah. Do you think people who are reluctant to take this upskill would eventually lose their jobs if they don't keep up, or is it just simply they will be disadvantaged in a way?
I wouldn't say they would lose their jobs, okay, because I mean, if you look at many, many years into the very distant future, maybe, okay. But then again, it will probably be compensated by the fact that, I think moving forward, a lot of our, education syllabuses might include some data science, aspects in it. Okay, I'm not sure, because now it's year 2020. I wouldn't know what's going to happen in year 2040, for example. Okay, but I think increasingly people are actually getting that awareness that data science skills or data analytic skills are actually very, very important. So it will actually make them want to go and take part in it, want to go and study it, and want to be very, very good in it. Okay, I was actually speaking to a group of friends. I noticed that quite a few of them actually started taking data science courses as well. Maybe even in university, they actually enroll in the data science degree. Yeah, like one of the young juniors that we have, let's say in my church, for example, we were just talking that day, and she said that she's taking data science degree. I'm like, wow, okay, that's a very good step. I told her, yeah. So I mean, I think the realization that data science is important is slowly creeping into everybody.
Yeah. Definitely, especially with COVID, when we are all forced to go to our laptops as well. So how do you see data transforming the finance industry, and what are we going to see more of in the coming years?
Okay, for the finance industry, I think the largest transformation that we're going to see is a lot of companies adopting the data lake model. Where we have
the data niche model.
Data lake, Lake.
Lake.
Yeah,
Okay.
the data lake model where people actually, where the company actually has a big lake full of data, so it's like a single source of truth, data repository for the entire organization, which would be useful for finance, which would be useful for even HR, even sales. Okay, so for finance, I think this is going to be the move go forward. We're going to have a large data lake in each company. So when we do reporting, to our management or even to our external stakeholders, we can be sure that we are actually taking the data from a single source and not multiple sources that require reconciliation. Okay, so that is one thing. Okay, and of course the other thing, it's gonna actually the data science skills are going to become more useful, because management will definitely want to know how you interpret all those data. Okay, does it give them some trends that they find useful, or does it tell them anything that they need to do in order to prevent the company from falling into some sort of a mishap, or maybe even tell them how they can improve their profitability. Okay, you can actually analyze data, and you can actually analyze how you spend, spending patterns, cost patterns. It will enable you to make the necessary decisions, to actually ensure that you remain profitable. So those are a few examples that I could think of actually for finance. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So wait, so the reason why you choose to have like a one place storage for all your data rather than having multiple is because of management. Is that correct?
It's not just management, it's because if you have multiple areas, where you keep data, we have multiple pockets of data, and both are trying to tell the same thing. Any finance professional will be able to tell you that the most important thing to ensure is that both of the data sources actually reconcile with one another. Okay, because if that doesn't happen, can you imagine a situation where group A uses data source A to report to management their revenue numbers. Okay, they'll say, oh, our revenue is 1 million, for example, and group B uses data source B to report to the same management, and they tell them, oh, based on our data, the revenue is 800,000. So the management will be bewildered. They'll be like, well, where did the 200,000 go? You see, so which one is the right one? You see, that is always the dilemma of any company that has too many sources of data that are not talking with each other. Yeah, so that's why it's important to have a single source of truth. You see, so I actually learned about this when I was back in Hewlett Packard, when I was in HP. Okay, so they had just recently transitioned to SAP. Okay, and they actually had a business warehouse where they had all the financial data in it. So I think that was actually a very, very good move, because it doesn't matter where you're what for what purpose you're pulling the data for. You could be reporting revenue, you could be reporting costs, but at the end of the day, you can be at least assured that the outputs that you generate will be able to reconcile back to what's really happening. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Is there any fears about having put all your data into one single place? I mean, that's like the only place where you guys put your data. Is there concerns about that?
Of course, any human being, I would say, would say that hey, we are concentrating everything into one place. So what happens if the module, like the data modules, crash? Or what happens if the whole infrastructure crashes? So that's where actually backups, and basically a lot of offline storages become important. You see, so there are many, I think, security measures in place to ensure that you remain operational when things like that happen. So normally these things are managed by those business continuity teams, so they ensure that in the event of a power outage, or in the event of a catastrophe, we will still be able to actually access the same data. Okay, so you're not going to have everything in one place. No, you're going to have a lot of mirrors. That's what I believe. You see, so if one place goes down, you'll still be able to go to another. Yeah.
Okay. Moving on. As someone who learns data science from a non-programming background, what would you tell other people who are on the same boat as you?
I'll tell them not to worry, not to get too worried about the programming language per se. For example, Python or even R. Okay, because at the end of the day, we need to focus on what's our ultimate goal. Our ultimate goal here is to process and analyze and to interpret data. Okay, Python, for example, is just a means to get to the end. Okay, yes, I do appreciate the fact that it's probably a new thing, for most people who do not have a programming background. Okay, and then they need to actually go and learn Python, before they can actually do anything about data. Okay, but I would say Python is a relatively easy language to understand. Okay, because I mean I'm speaking from the perspective of someone who has totally no programming background. Okay, so I found Python actually relatively easy to use. I mean, in terms of being able to get you to perform the necessary basic data analytic skills. Okay, so don't be too worried about Python. I would say, just learn it. Take the course, learn it. Learn it, do your exercises, and most importantly, get used to it and practice. Okay, and you will actually get a hang of it. Yeah. So that's
Yes.
actually it actually applies to all programming languages. I've had friends who are full stack developers, web developers. They only tell me one thing: it's all practice. Okay, so if you do it every day, it'll become ingrained in you. It becomes second in nature. So you will actually develop a flair for it. So I mean, you just need to actually discipline yourself to actually devote to some practice. Yeah.
Yeah. But you started with R first, right? So
Mm.
do you have like a preference of which language you use, or do you kind of use both equally?
Okay, I don't really have a preference, but obviously Data Science 360 uses Python. Okay, but if need be, I could probably jump back to R, but I'll probably need a refresher.
Oh,
Because
so you haven't been to it for quite some
I've not
time.
used R for some time, but I could use a refresher. I will actually I don't really have a preference. Both sites are actually equally useful. It is just that R, historically R has been used by academics. Okay, so R is very useful for looking at the research data. Then they have the ability to actually come up with output that is very very useful for academics. In fact, R, I think Dr. Lau will tell you as well. R is written by R. The language was actually conceived by an academician. Yeah, so that's
Oh,
yeah. But Python is a programming language, a full-on programming language. But I feel that in terms of versatility, I think Python is more used in the industry. You look at any job advertisements, actually, they'll tell you, oh, you need to be able to use Python. Yeah, so I think that one is a more widely used language, at least in the parts of industry that I'm familiar with here in Malaysia. Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
so that's my take on it, actually. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Uh, can you tell me like how was your experience like learning from I mean, how did you feel like when you were learning R for the first time or data science in general?
Well, everyone starts with "Hello World." That's your first step, and I needed to, really, really just get into the act of typing the code and running the code, you know, and you need to do it all over and over again, so it just sticks into you. So it's all about practice. So yes, I felt initially, when I was reading when I was going through the syllabus for R, for data science, for the data science basics course that I took online, I was like, wow, this is quite, even if it's a basics course, but it's quite a fair bit, I was thinking. So I took it slow, actually. Today I'll do this chapter, tomorrow I'll do this chapter. So I told myself, okay, I'm going to decide to be patient. I'm just going to do it day by day. I'm not going to I'm not going to cram everything into 1 week, for example. No, this is not a race. Okay, and this actually is a trap that a lot of people fall into. Okay, they actually think that, oh, I need to be able to prove myself. I want to do this and no. At the end of the day, what do you want? You see, do you want to show people that you're a superhuman by completing everything in a week, or do you really want to master it properly and take the time that it needs? Okay,
That's
so
true.
that is the advice I gave. I gave some of my relatives, or even some of my friends. I told them, hey, don't rush it. Learn it properly. Take the time. When people ask you, in the process, tell them, hey, I'm learning. So there's nothing wrong with that. Okay, so if you take the time to learn, and then at the end of the day, you become good at it, I think the satisfaction is great. You see, rather than you cram it all, try to cram it all into a week, that I see a lot of people trying to do, and at the end of the day, they don't learn anything. So yeah, I took the time.
Yeah.
I did time. Yeah, yeah.
So slow and steady wins the race.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, I took quite a couple of months, to actually just master the R basics. Yeah,
Oh, okay.
I believe it was
Uh,
April to May this year. Yeah,
hmm.
yeah.
How long did it take for you to learn Python? Was it like also took a long number of months, or was it a bit faster now that you were more familiar with
Uh,
coding?
Python was a little bit faster, and I think I could credit that to the course that I took, the Data Science 360 course, because what was taught to me was actually what's sufficient, for you to become some sort of a data scientist. Okay, so the way that it was structured was pretty easy. The exercises, you got people pretty much are running up to speed. You see, at the end of the day, especially at the end of day one and day two, you'd be able to use Python like sort of reasonably well. Okay, because you don't need to learn everything about Python to do data science. Okay, because Python, like I mentioned, is actually a programming language. Okay, you could use it for developing applications. You could even use it to automate your home. Okay, but you could use it for data science as well. So just learn the parts that are important for data science, and you'll be there. You see?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think people enter in with the mindset like, oh, I have to learn everything in order to like master and
No,
do things.
no, not necessarily actually. Yeah, because for data science, you're only going to use that amount of functions, that amount of libraries. I mean, of course, even for data science, there's a big world out there in Python. You see, but I think what was taught to me was actually very sufficient. It gets you up and running. Okay, it gets you going with at least knowing how to code a little bit in Python, and more importantly, it makes you curious as to, hey, what other things are there in Python. It makes you want to learn by yourself. At the end of the day. Okay,
Hmm.
so I guess that's my journey in Python. I think it was Dr. Lau has been quite helpful. Dr. Lau and Edmund have been quite helpful, both of them.
Yeah, yeah, they're really helpful teachers.
Yeah, that's why. Yeah.
Okay, what immediate benefits did you get with your data science skills? And did you ask for a salary raise or role change?
During COVID season, are you crazy?
Okay, maybe not now, but like in
Maybe
the
not now.
maybe in the future.
Maybe in the future. Okay. But the immediate benefit that I saw was actually, this is actually a real thing. I actually used Python to process a huge database, okay, of logistics data, okay, because we needed to extract order numbers, okay, from all this logistics data. So as you know, logistics data, it's basically, a very huge file, and inside the file, okay, the file actually flouts every single database normality that okay. It's multiple pieces of data in one cell. Okay, so how do you do that? Okay, so I used Python. I looked up. I admit I went to Stack Overflow. Okay, and I looked up the steps. So I was able to use that language, the Python language, to actually extract order numbers from the logistics file to be able to tell whether something was shipped. Yeah, that was actually a very useful immediate benefit, because if I had done it using Excel, okay, your code will be, I think, probably longer than your screen. Yeah. But for Python, actually, the advantage is that you're able to execute, the task, using a sequence of codes, and then when people see your code, they actually get to understand what's the logic behind it, compared to Excel, where people will have a hard time looking at what on earth you just did. Yeah. So yeah, I felt that was the most immediate benefit that I got from whatever I learned.
Yeah, so it makes things clearer and easier to see.
Yeah, you actually see it clearer because people will be able to see your steps, and people will be able to see what you're trying to do.
Did you notice any other benefits afterwards?
Afterwards, well, I did try doing something with my HR data. Yeah, but yeah, I foresee that once that's done, I'll be able to actually sort of predict, if somebody in the organization is going to leave, or if somebody is going to, remain with the organization. So that's kind of like a work in progress, because our HR systems, they've been through quite a few evolutions, so data acquisition and cleaning is going to be, a big step there. So that one will need some time. Yeah, but I foresee that, we will be able to reap the benefits, once I'm actually done with this. Yeah.
Would you encourage your own staff members to also go and learn data science as well?
Yeah, I would really, really encourage them to learn it, not if not for their immediate job, because most of my team members, they are actually accountants, they're actually like revenue accountants, invoicing specialists, collection, credit and collections people. So if they have data science knowledge, they will actually be able to see data in a different light, So I think that's what I would really encourage them to do. Okay, so that at least they get the skills to actually process data, and more importantly, they become not afraid of large amounts of data.
I see.
That's what I'll actually recommend them to do. Yeah.
Is there anyone who is currently learning data science?
Not at the moment, actually. Yeah, not at the moment, because I think, to be honest, the awareness of this data science, this data science knowledge in the average, the average employee, in Malaysia at least, is still a little bit low. Okay, I would say maybe the millennials or the Gen Zs, okay, they probably realize the benefits of it, so maybe they are into it at this point in time. But people from my age group, or maybe one age group junior to me, I think they're still, this whole thing is still pretty new to them, so they are probably struggling to try to make time for it, So, but yeah, like I said, we need to give them the time. Okay, we cannot force it, because if we force it, it becomes not meaningful. You see, so for that, they need to actually be the ones to realize it themselves, that they need the skills, and they go and they go into it. But I think, in terms of the knowledge, of handling data, they have it, okay. But in terms of how to, deal with large amounts of data, I think that's their next step.
Okay.
It'll be very, very important, like you said. It'll be very important if they pick up the skill, in order to remain employable in the distant future, because a lot of them are still very young. See, I mean, they are probably like the early 30s, some of them, most of them. So I think it's probably a good time for them to maybe spend a couple of hours a week, just to learn something like this. Yeah.
Yeah. So we know what tools you use, which is mainly Python. Do you have any favorite data analytic methods?
Well, it's funny that you should ask that, because even though I'm an accountant, but I am actually a trained statistician as well. So I actually use like all these programming languages like Python, or even R, or even Excel, okay, to do regression analysis. So that actually is a very useful tool to actually determine the correlation between two sets of data. Okay, when you plot them on a X and Y and X axis, okay, it'll be able to tell you if significantly the data is actually correlated with one another. Okay, can they be explained by some sort of a equation? So that is actually very powerful. To actually develop a machine learning model, that will enable you to predict outcomes, based on data that you throw at it. Yeah. So that is actually a very good method, I would say, and it's a method that I'm actually very, very familiar with. So that's actually one of my favorites. Okay, and the other favorites that I do is maybe a more simple correlation matrix, for determining how two variables are related to one another. I actually did that recently for my collections team, because we always had an issue, before this, we always had an issue with forecasting collections. Okay, so I actually dug into a bit of knowledge that I gained from data science. I asked my staff to actually pull some data for me. I told them, hey, pull for me the accounts receivable, the ending balances, pull for me the revenue amounts on a monthly basis, and pull for me like the balance for maybe your unbilled receivables and things like that. So I plotted the data next to each other, and I developed graphs, to actually see whether or not the data is moving in lockstep with one another. And sure enough, okay, we found out that until today, our accounts receivable balances are still very correlated with revenue. Okay,
Oh,
it's moving in lockstep. Okay, so that tells you that that actually tells you that you are actually very, you actually have a very good pattern to follow. Okay, and that tells you that your customers are paying you on time. Because if your customers are not paying on time, assuming they don't even pay you at all, your AR is going to go up and up and up, and your revenue is just going to go like this, you see. But then if they're moving in lockstep, it means that they are actually discharging their debt obligations and they're paying you. Okay, so that makes it a lot easier for you to sort of predict your collections. You see, your collections from your customers. Okay, just by looking at revenue alone, isn't it? Yeah.
ah,
And then of course, if you want to fine tune it, you maybe actually do things like, you calculate ratios like what's your collections over your beginning AR balance, what's your collections over revenue. So you develop all these little ratios, and all your little indexes, indices, collections effectiveness index, for example. Okay, it actually shows you past behavior. Okay, it shows you past behavior, and you're able to tell your team, hey, you've done this before. I don't see why you can't do it now. Okay, so it actually plays a very big role in motivating them to do something. Say, hey, yeah, actually we did it before. So it makes them want to maintain that statistic. That's the game. You see, so
yeah.
yeah, so that's kind of like the little game I'm playing now in my company. I just submitted my forecast, and the corporate is pretty happy with it. Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds so like satisfying to know, like, oh, the numbers line and oh, there's results coming out.
Like, oh, okay, it's correlated. So people will say, hey, if that's the case, I think I know what I'm gonna do. I think I know how I'm gonna come in at the end of next month, or the month after, okay, or maybe for the whole of the next quarter. Okay, so I think it's a very useful tool. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it sounds really inspiring to like you be able to use that tool to
Yep,
get
it is. Yeah,
such correlations.
yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you face? What are your biggest challenges at work as a data professional?
Well, definitely anyone will tell you this, for work that actually revolves around data, the most like challenging aspect would be actually cleaning acquiring and cleaning the data. Okay, because a lot of, let's say, the exercises that we do in data science, is basically based off data that's already clean and proper. Okay, but in the real world, okay, we need to actually collect the data ourselves. We need to see if there are any missing bits. We need to actually interact with the various departments and ask them, say, hey, you did not fill in this part here, so what's this supposed to be? So you will definitely have the challenge of spending long hours trying to clean the data, trying to interact with the various departments that are responsible for the data. Okay, so that is basically my biggest challenge at work. But at the end of the day, once your data set is complete or actually clean enough to do your analysis, that's when you actually get that satisfaction. Yeah, always, that's the biggest challenge if you ask anybody working with data. Yeah.
Do you have any strategies to overcome this problem?
Okay. You will never be able to change people overnight. I would say, like for example, if somebody isn't entering the correct data into a system, for example, so whatever you pull out of the system is going to be probably nonsense at best, you see. So my strategy is to educate people, have like sessions with my peers from other departments, to tell them, hey, maybe we could actually get your team to maybe be a little bit more careful when they input data into a system, like for example Salesforce, or for example Oracle. Can you get them to be a bit more careful when you're actually inputting data? Because when you input things in an incorrect manner, you're going to throw out analysis that doesn't make sense as well, you see. So that's what I try to tell them, and I get my team also to develop good relationships with the various departments, so that if they need to actually make a query about a particular data set, at least they can actually approach them easily, and maybe they wouldn't get so much pushback, okay, from their counterparts. Okay, it's again at the end of the day all about managing your relationships with various departments, because they are the suppliers of the data that you're using. Come to think of it, is it? So you need to have that relationship with them in order to make your journey, your work a lot smoother. Yeah. So that's what I always believed. Yeah.
Yeah, education really plays an important part of really making things smoother now.
It does actually. It does.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, the last question. What are the upcoming hot data roles in the finance industry?
Okay. You wouldn't actually see it right now, but I think a lot more and more people are actually hiring, analysts, that are able to work in those like data lake projects, although they don't really specify it in the job description that you see on Job Street. Okay, but don't be surprised, if you go for that job, maybe somebody like me who will be sitting in the interview table will be asking you, how much do you know about, analyzing data, or how comfortable are you, in dealing with large amounts of data. So when things like that come in, immediately you know that, hey, this role is going to be dealing with a lot of data. Okay, so I think I better get myself educated, in these, data analytics, like tools and stuff like Python. Okay, so the hot upcoming roles will be more, people who actually play a part in developing data lakes, or managing finance projects. Okay, because a lot of companies now are undergoing a lot of transformation. So along with transformation, there definitely is a lot of data. Because come to think about it, you need to actually, analyze data to be able to actually decide how you want to transform. You see?
Hmm.
So these are the kind of roles, that normally will become more prevalent, in the market. They're not going to tell you in the job description, no, we need a data scientist, finance analyst. No, you're not gonna find that, at least for now. Maybe in the future, not now. But you're going to find that a lot of the work that you do, okay, will be centered upon, like data transformation or business process excellence, and all of these, mind you, they utilize a lot of data.
Yeah, yeah. So, if let's say you're hiring someone, you will look for someone who both has finance skills and data science skills. Is it?
I would say, yeah, ideally, I would like someone who actually has very strong finance skills, maybe like they have years in finance experience, and of course, some data analytics skills. Okay, if I were to want to hire someone like maybe a team leader or a manager, for example. So that one would be one of the very useful prerequisites, before someone walks into a role like that. But if, let's say, you're hiring a very junior role, then maybe not, maybe they can actually come in, and then from there they can learn, and then we can actually motivate them to learn more, yeah. But if you're hiring a more senior role, I think you probably need to have that, that sort of a little bit of that skills already, at your disposal, you see.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like for example, myself, when I walked into this role of mine, my boss, who was my interviewer, was asking me if I knew how to, if I'm comfortable, dealing with, a huge amounts of transactions.
Mm.
So they were telling me things like, okay, you're gonna be dealing with like 1,000 lines every month, things like that. So immediately that tells you, hey, this role needs me to be comfortable around data, okay, as well as data analytics methods. You see? Yeah, people normally get scared when they hear data analytics because they're thinking like, oh, all the scientific methods that they see in research papers. No, okay, data analytics basically is you trying to make sense of the data, to analyze the data, to actually be able to give management, I think, the important information that they need. You see, so the methods sometimes could be very simple, like for example, just a very simple correlation matrix, like I mentioned to you, or sometimes they just want to see a graph. Okay, they
Yeah.
just want to see a graph, or chart, showing them their performance, so that they know how they've been tracking and how they've been doing. Okay, so but the thing is, in order to get there, you still need to, get your hands dirty with, a lot of data. So that is the part that, your interviewers will be asking you if you're comfortable with doing. So my advice to people going for interviews like this is, don't immediately think that you're going to be writing, you're going to be doing something like what you do in a research paper. No. Okay. I don't think that's what you need to do, but you need to at least, be comfortable in handling large amounts of data. So, and that's where data science skills come in useful. See, so that is my opinion about the roles that we currently have in finance industry. Yeah.
Yeah. So like in short, go in. Yes, it's good to learn data science skills, but come in with the basics first if you are entering as a junior, and then from there develop and learn.
Yeah, coming as a basic skill. At the end of the day, I'm not gonna ask the junior accountant to be an Einstein in data. No, not really actually, because these are the things that you learn, when you come in. You see, but as you progress along, definitely the demand for your skills in handling data increases. Okay, so that's when you need to get yourself sort of educated. Get yourself upskilled in terms of data science knowledge. Okay, so not many people will share my views, I think, but this is my perception. This is how I see it moving forward. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because a lot of things like the accounting profession, for example, they are also doing what it takes to stay relevant.
Mhm.
Okay. So I think for us, as professionals in a company, okay, we also need on our own to do something to actually ensure that we stay relevant, and that is of course getting ourselves informed about the latest happenings in the accounting industry, and getting ourselves acquainted and getting ourselves upskilled in our abilities to process and analyze and interpret data, large amounts of data.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, thank you, Matthew, for joining us today
No
and
problem at
really
all.
telling us about this.
No problem at all. Actually, glad to speak to you. Yeah.